It's Beehive Banter time. In a rather confused political state, a successful return to the country for the PM, an average return to the country for Luxon, another double hike from the Reserve Bank, and yes, the second COVID wave. The war in Ukraine continues. The Pacific in a unified but not really state. Fuel prices trending down, but for how long? And government budget blowouts with them seemingly getting away with it. Where to start, Brent Edwards? Well, let's start with something that's just ended. The Pacific Islands Forum, as I said, would happen, Brent. The wallets got open, particularly from the US, who admitted they've been sadly lacking in Pacific support. The communique, well, a critical juncture, a lot of challenges, a highly contested sphere of interest with external players trying to seek influence. Do they mean both China and America, Brent?
Well, they do actually, and it was interesting because there were some specific comments from, for instance, the Foreign Minister of Tuvalu making the point about Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States, who beamed into the meeting, which is very unusual, to speak to the leaders and to, as you say, basically tell them that the US was deeply interested, handing out some money, opening a couple of new embassies, including in Kiribati, which of course had sort of already announced it was leaving the forum. There is this sort of superpower competition now going on in the Pacific, largely between China and the United States, but also, with groups like the European Union, Japan, and Australia and New Zealand actually also deeply interested. And as the Tuvalu Foreign Minister said, the big issue for them is climate change for that country as to whether it's going to continue to survive and stay above the water. A lot of those superpower interests don't actually match with the concerns and interests of those small Pacific Island states.
So apart from money and a couple of embassies, anything else going to come from it? Or is it just a big long-term goal?
Look, all these meetings, you say what comes out of them, and there's not necessarily an immediate sort of outcome, but it is important that the Pacific Islands Forum exists and that there's a forum particularly for these smaller island states to have their voice heard. And so at least that is one area where they do get their voice heard, and in a way they can interact with those larger countries, including the superpowers, and at least get the point across. So that is important. The big thing will be to see how the forum develops from here. Will Kiribati be wooed back into the fold? Because, really, if you look at the situation at the moment with COVID-19 pandemic still rolling on, but particularly with climate change. And as the Fijian Prime Minister said, the big three Cs, COVID, climate change and conflict, then, there are a lot of issues at stake for the Pacific, and they're better off dealing with them collaboratively and as one in a way, rather than splitting apart. So, and I guess that's the concern about the impact of superpower politics in the region. It will tend to drive divisions possibly between various member states rather than pull them together.
But a lot of talk doesn't build a seawall, does it?
No, it doesn't. No. So so that one of those things is important for Pacific Island states, is about some support and money. And the Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern announced a bit of money, I think $10 million or so, around trying for seeds that make them climate resistant and stuff. That's small beer for the moment. It's helpful, but I guess there is more money in the booty from New Zealand in terms of climate change help. So, you would expect that there'd be some more significant announcements to come.
All right, a couple of other announcements towards the back end of last week. Firstly, to the COVID announcement, we had free masks, free rats, and Aisha Verrall, the Minister, not giving an indication about what it would take to go back to red under our traffic light system. Now, they won't do it, Brent, because it would be political harakiri.
Yeah, well, it would be, but I guess being questioned about it constantly. The government's still going to keep it in the toolbox just in case of some worst case scenario. Now, what that is, not quite sure, but for instance, I guess if cases did really ramp out of control and the death rate went up through the roof, the government might have to take much tougher measures than it's proposed.
Yeah, but hang on. Last time we were at these figures, we were in red.
We were in red, but now we've gone out, so things have changed. People were complaining about us being in red, and now people seem to be complaining, or you do, Grant, that we're not in red. Look,
I don't want us to be in red. Where's the line?
The thing that surprised me the most is that there was a big push around mask use, and obviously they're doing things like making free masks available and all that sort of stuff. and they said quite clearly that you should wear a mask in any indoor setting outside your own home. And there's going to be a big encouragement given to businesses to basically get staff to wear masks and to keep on improving ventilation. But they didn't take the next step and just mandate mask use. And we know from experience, if you look about it on public transport, they recommended the use of masks on public transport for quite some time, and very few people wore masks. They then mandated it, and pretty much everyone's wearing a mask on trains and buses, etc.
So why aren't they doing it? Why not then?
I'm not quite sure. I don't know. I mean, we know they can't enforce mandates. I mean, you can't have police, etc., and businesses, but a lot of laws can't be enforced at the time. But a mandate, it just gives a greater signal to people, you've got to do this. And most people respond to that seemingly better than they do to a recommendation to do it, even when it's a strong recommendation. So the big question will be, as we look at this week and the week beyond, will the numbers keep on going up? Ashley Bloomfield, the Director General of Health, said their modelling showed daily hospitalisation cases going as high as 1,200 on the current trends. If this works, the greater use of masks, they'll keep it under 1,000. But that will depend on, presumably, everyone doing what's recommended. And on the basis of how serious they say it is, in terms of for the health system particularly, you'd think they would have mandated it. But there is a reason for businesses to do this, because if this second wave starts, obviously, to cause further disruption, I mean, a lot of businesses are going to be affected by having more and more staff away, either sick or isolating because their family members are sick.
But here's the problem there. If the businesses turn around and they mandate it and they say, right, well, you have to wear it, and it's not mandated by the government, you could have staff turn around saying, well, I don't have to do it. You're in no position to tell me to do it, and you can't fine me because of it.
Well, yeah, it can be seen as a health and safety issue. But, I mean, you're right. No one in the end can enforce any of these things. But if you give a clear instruction, it's more than likely most people will follow it.
All right, well, let's find out whether these people will follow something. To the gang announcement from the new Police Minister, Chris Hipkins, who, as usual, isn't wasting any time. He's getting stuck in, and along with Justice Minister Kitty Allen, another rising star, giving police extra power. Good, bad, or look good spin, Brent?
Well, I mean, the police have welcomed it. They seem to think it will help in their sort of battle to keep the gangs under control and to crack down on crime. The National Party and the ACT, I think, say it doesn't go far enough, and the Green Party thinks it goes too far, that it is just politicking and playing the we're tough on crime approach. But when you look at the proposals they're putting in place around cracking down on the use of cash to buy goods, new sentencing for people who've shooted homes and that to intimidate, etc. But of course, none of this, the gangs won't be quivering in their boots this week, because they now have to bring legislation in to put all this into effect. So presumably it's still several weeks, maybe months away before it actually does come into effect. But
this whole cash thing confuses the hell out of me. The proposal to ban significant cash payments for watches, cars and boats. Now, the cash amount, as you said, has not been decided, but here's my son. He buys cars. That's what he does. He offers cash to get the best deal. He's not in a gang. So are they saying, he can't do that anymore?
Well, I mean, I guess could be.
It's legal tender. It's legal tender.
That could be one of the unintended consequences, but presumably it's only going to apply. We'll have to wait and see what the legislation says.
What?
It's only
if you're a gang member, you can't buy a car with cash.
Well, that's presumably what the legislation will be clear on.
Okay, pretty unclear at the moment. Anyway, so Luxon, back from overseas with cancelled meetings in the UK after the Boris backstab, and apart from saying our businesses are getting soft, although he says he was taken out of context, although that is what he said. At a time where Kāinga Ora will take 60 years to repay debt, the new Polytech organisation's virtually broke, housing in disarray, and on it goes. He should be flying at the moment, then Brent. And then ACT a couple of weekends ago, giving a list of legislation it wants thrown out in the first 100 days. None of this is helpful, is it?
Well, National is flying at the moment, Grant, under his leadership. I mean, let's be clear. I mean, he has.
Well, the polls, yes, but
that's in terms of, the measurement of success for an opposition, that's all they can go on until there's actually an election. But in terms of the other issues you talked about, Kangora, the politics, those cases are being prosecuted by National Party spokespeople, Chris Bishop, Penny Simmons and the like. It's not like they are ignoring them. They are raising issues. When it comes to ACT's to-do list, as Christopher Luxon himself told NBR, most of that, and most of those things are National Party policy anyway, so there's no problem with that.
Well, that's kind of handy, isn't it? Well, ACT had their AGM last weekend. This weekend, it's the Greens. What bike riding public transport promises can we expect?
Well, I think again at the Green Party AGM you're going to get further tensions around, are the Greens achieving enough in government, particularly around climate change? And I think there's been ongoing, again, mutterings, pretty limited really, but about particularly co-leader James Shaw, climate change minister, he's not getting enough wins.
For crying out loud, he's got more wins for the Greens than they've ever had.
I know, but from a Green Party perspective, they want a much, much more radical agenda, which James Shaw himself says. But you're right, the Greens could do better to actually celebrate some of the successes they've had by being, part of this government, just actually as National Party supporters might want to celebrate the progress that the party has made under Christopher Luxon's leadership, in terms of the sort of turmoil they were in for the 2 or 3 years before he took over. That's no longer evident.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. And by the way, do you think, will James Shaw still be co-leader at the end of it?
Yeah. Look, I mean, there's been a bit of chit-chat going on, but it's a very, very limited chit-chat about. There are 1 or 2 people who would like to see him gone, but this has come up every AGM, and he's always got substantial support, and I don't think there's any indication there'll be anything different this time around.
All right, well, that's BI Banner for another week as we sit and wait for this time next week when we'll know how the world has reacted to more melting ice, more worrisome war, more speculation on Trump running for president again and possibly winning, more loss of asset value here, and another rise in the price of my favourite tipple. But on the positive side, at least we're here in New Zealand, and I get to share this platform with whom I believe is now the longest-serving current political encyclopedia, the grand poobah of politics, Brent Edwards. I wouldn't have it any other way, Brent, and as usual, thank you. And thank you for listening or watching. We do appreciate it.